Senator Warnock is recognized, who is decidedly not boring.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The latest monetary policy report shows inflation in housing costs is gradually easing. That's good news. But many Georgians still feel the sting of unaffordable homes and mortgages. And one reason for this, you and I have discussed this, is that we aren't building enough houses. 2022 study published in the Journal of Economic Geography found that for every 10% increase in the housing stock, rents decreased by 1%. We've discussed this issue, particularly the effects of housing supply on housing costs. And we agreed that while the Federal Reserve does not control housing supply, it can help create the environment that encourages the construction of new housing, particularly affordable housing. Chair Powell, how has the Fed been working to foster an environment that encourages home construction, and what, in your view, are the challenges that remain?
So, I mean, in the long run, the absolute best thing we can do for the housing market and for the economy is to sustainably bring inflation back down so that people aren't talking about it anymore. And it's just assumed by everybody in their daily lives that inflation will be around 2%, so we don't need to talk about it, which is where we were for a long time. We want to get back to that. Interest rates can come down then, and the housing market can return to the state it was in before the pandemic, which was to say really tight. We don't have enough housing, and that's not really a monetary policy issue. In the short term, though, I would say tight monetary policy weighs on the housing market. The policy works through interest-sensitive spending, and housing is definitely at the top of the list of interest-sensitive spending. So we understand that we're suppressing, not suppressing, but our higher interest rates have led to lower housing starts and lower activity in the housing market. But we're doing that to get back to 2% inflation for the whole economy, so that the housing market can be on a better foundation.
Well, yeah, and related to that, when you have these high interest rates, of course, you see across the country, but particularly in a state like Georgia, these institutional investors who are coming into the space, and they're buying houses in all cash, boxing out first-generation home buyers. And of course, the conditions for them doing that improve to their favor with higher interest rates. Would you agree with that assessment?
I know some of that's happening. I don't know that higher interest rates make it. I mean, some of they're working with.
Well, if you got higher interest rates and you've got institutional buyers who can purchase it all cash, doesn't that further?
But they have to borrow the money at higher interest rates. I'm just saying higher interest rates doesn't make their investment any cheaper. And notwithstanding, I understand it's a sensitive issue, and in most markets, it's still a pretty small portion of the outstanding housing stock. But it's not an issue. It's not an issue for us. They're a legal buyer of housing. Our job is really the whole economy. I mean, it's more of a question for legislatures.
So how can the Fed better deploy its monetary tools to ensure that we are meeting key inflation objectives like housing affordability?
I think the best thing we can do is is kind of what we think we've been doing, which is to move carefully as we think about loosening policy and make sure that we do that when we've got greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down toward 2%. We're also keeping a close eye on the labor market, and if we see unexpected weakening there, then we could respond to that too. But that's really the best thing we can do for the whole economy, and very specifically for the housing market too.
Sure. You well point out that you're limited in terms of your influence there, and there is a role for Congress, to be sure, which is one of the reasons I wanted to be on this committee to introduce a down payment toward Equity Act with my colleague, Senator Butler. This bill would help first-generation home buyers compete with Wall Street institutional investors by helping with down payment costs, closing costs, and costs to reduce interest rates. I look forward to continuing productive conversations with you and looking at how we can make housing more affordable for all Americans. I'm running out of time here, but one of the other concerns that I maintain is with respect to reducing the racial wealth gap is this issue around home appraisals. And the Fed is part of the interagency task force on property appraisal and valuation equity. What expertise and perspective has the Fed brought to this task force? How are you responding to this issue of home appraisals?
So, as you know, we've been an active participant in that task force, and we bring all of the expertise we have in the housing market, as well as regulatory, supervisory, and economic expertise generally, as we look at that. And I'll also say that our strongly held view is that discrimination has no place in the banking system, and that includes appraisals and other valuations.
I agree with that, and quickly, I was glad to see that CFPB and other agencies recently finalized a rule that creates strong anti-discrimination standards for automated home evaluations. The Fed has not yet approved this rule. Why not, and does the Fed plan to do so?
Sorry, why do we?
You've not yet approved the rule that was made, that was suggested by the CFPB. They finalized the rule.
But do we? Sorry, I didn't. I'm not aware that it's a rule that we have to finalize too. Is that the case?
That is my understanding.
I will. Let me follow up with you on that. I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.